We have spent a lot of time exploring the interface of AutoCAD in previous chapters and sections. I wanted to make sure that you knew how to work inside of AutoCAD. Enough is enough. Let's actually learn how to draw something. I'm sure you're very excited about that. Well, that's the focus of this section of videos. Now, it's likely that the most common object drawn in the average 2D file in AutoCAD is the line. Now, it might be the easiest object to draw even, just 2 endpoints, just 2 clicks of the mouse, but there are many ways to draw it. So let's get into a blank file that we can use. So if you're in Get Started, just go to your templates and open up an AutoCAD.dwt file. No need to save it or anything, we're just going to go through the command. Now to start the line command, you can go to a lot of different places to do that. If you go to the ribbon, you can go to the Home tab. On the draw panel, this is the line command right here. Left click on it, and it's the line command. Now, you can also type in the word line, press enter, and draw another line. Or you can just type in the letter L. They all get you to the same place, and they all work the exact same way. Let's erase these, and let's take a good hard look at the line command. Now the line command is pretty simple. It consists of 2 points. You start the command, pick your first point, move your mouse, pick your second point. That's it. Press return to finish it up, and you have a line. Now the real trick is drawing a line at a specific length, at a specific angle, or a specific location. Fortunately, AutoCAD gives us the ability to draw lines as accurate and as precisely as we want to, and in a lot of different ways. Now, there are many ways, of course, to draw the line we need. Some of the options that we have are by coordinates, by length, by relative direction, by angle, by relative coordinates, and almost any combination of these. Now, if you're starting a brand new drawing, it can be difficult to figure out exactly where to start. I suggest that you find a line that you can base all of your other lines from and go from there. Now in this example, we're going to draw a very simple outline of a house. So I'm going to erase this line here so that we have a clean drawing to work on. So we're going to draw a horizontal line that's 50 feet across. First, let's start with a blank drawing, and I wanted to make sure that we're working in architectural units. So type in the word units, press enter. Make sure we're in architectural and we're in inches, which we are. And when you switch to architectural, the insertion scale should automatically switch to inches, but always double check it just in case. Everything we draw at 1 to 1, meaning 1 unit is going to be 1 inch long. So let's start the line command. Let's put our first point at the origin, or at coordinate 0, 0. Press return. You can pan and zoom to get close to it so that you are kind of in the right area. Now what we're going to do is draw a horizontal line 50 feet to the right. Now there are a lot of different ways you can do that. You can turn on your ortho command, and that will lock you in orthogonally, or horizontal or vertical. And we want to draw it 50 feet to the right. Now remember, we're working in inches for our units, so if we type in 50, it will draw the line at 50 inches. But we want feet, so we can type in 50 and then put in an apostrophe or the foot symbol. AutoCAD will say, oh, okay, yeah, you're drawing 50 units. Oh, but these units are feet, not inches. Okay, I will convert it, do the math, and it's real smart that way. And boom, there's our line. I'm going to press return. I'm going to double click on my scroll wheel for a zoom extents. And here we go. We have our first line of our house that is 50 feet long. One way to check the length of an object real quick is to select it and then hover over one of the grips, and it will give you some basic dimensions. So we can see here it's 50 feet long, which is exactly what we wanted to do. When you're working in architectural units, you draw in inches. Now there are 12 inches to a foot, so 12 times 50 is 600. You can type in 50 apostrophe like we just did for our 50-foot long line, or you can also type in 600, which is 600 units, which is 600 inches, which is 50 feet. Now, if we needed to draw something at 50.5 feet or 50 foot 6 inches, you can. You just type that in as 50 apostrophe 6. No spaces, no separators, nothing like that. And it will draw it at 50 feet 6 inches. Since we turned on the F8 key, it locked in our line to being horizontal or vertical, but I moved the mouse to the right for my first pick point. And so it said, okay, 50 feet that way. Now we're going to draw our next line. And this will be sort of the side wall of our house. So start the line command again, press return, and we're going to draw it from this point right here. Well, if you type in the letters E and D for end, this will do an O snap override. Press enter, and it will snap. See that little green glyph that pops up there? That'll snap on, and that means it's locking into that end point of that line. Started from that end point of that line, and we want to go 30 feet. So type in 30 apostrophe. Make sure your cursor is moved up above the line here so that we can continue on drawing up. Press return. Keep the command going. And you can zoom out with your scroll wheel and pan around as well. Now we're going to go back to the left. So we want to type in 50 feet, 50 apostrophe. Make sure your mouse is moved to the left before you type it in. Press return. And now we're going to do the same. We're going to go at 30 feet, but down. So press return again. And there's the basic outline for the front of our house. Remember that glitch in AutoCAD that sometimes it keeps you from zooming or panning? You can type in REA to refresh your screen. Now we're going to draw the roof. It's just a simple triangle that we're going to do. Start the line command again. Again, type in E and D for your O snap overrides. Press enter and snap to this point. And we're going to draw 5 feet to the right. So 5 feet, or again, remember we're in inches, so you can type in 60 for inches, but no inch mark. You don't have to do that. Press enter. That went over 5 feet. Remember, you can also draw in polar coordinates, or more typically in relative polar coordinates. That means that you can draw lines based on length and angle. To do this, you again start the command line unless you're in it already. You pick your first point. Right now, our first point is right here. And then with the dynamic input on, like I have on right now, you just type in your length, press the tab key, and then the angle. Now, I've already done the math ahead of time, and I'm going to put the top of our roof right about here. And so I know what has to be done. So I'm going to type in 40 feet, then press the tab key. And now I'm going to enter in the angle. Because my ortho command is on, it's going to automatically enter in angles according to every 90 degrees. So I'm going to turn that off through this toggle switch here. And now you can get a better look at it. Now remember, when you draw an angle in AutoCAD, 0 degrees is to the right on a perfectly horizontal line. That's 0 degrees. 90 degrees starts here and then goes counterclockwise until it's straight up. 180 degrees is continuing on down to here. And that's where it goes. So remember, it starts on the right and then goes counterclockwise. So we want our angle to look a little bit like this. So I've already figured out what our angle needs to be, and that's going to be 138.59. And there's our angle. Okay, and now I'm going to draw my line down on the opposite direction. Now I need 40 feet. Make sure you type in the feet, press tab. And I need to type in my angle. Now, angles can get kind of tricky. Sometimes they can be relative to where your mouse location is. If I keep my mouse location in this quadrant, it may treat it as being negative. So I'm going to make sure I'm up here in this positive coordinate, and I'm going to type in 221.41 degrees. And there it goes. Now I'm going to just snap to this endpoint, type E and D, press enter. Left click on that point, press enter again, zoom extents, and there is the basic outline of our house. Now this is very simple right here of what we've just done, but that shows you a lot of different ways that you can draw different lines using different types of methods. We did some absolute coordinates, absolute lengths. We used the ortho command to help us lock it in vertical and horizontally. We also used some relative polar coordinates, so we can draw in that way as well. And before we go, I want to review drawing with coordinates. If you enter in coordinates for the first point in your line, they will always be absolute, meaning that those coordinates are where your first point of the line will be drawn. When we drew our very first line here, this bottom line, we started it off at 0, 0. It knew exactly where to go. That's an absolute coordinate. Now, if you enter in coordinates for the second point, they will be what's called relative distance, or it will be that many units from your first point. So if I draw my line again from 0, 0, press return, and let's say I want it to be at 25 feet to the right and 25 feet up, so somewhere around this area. I need to make sure that I tell it to go 25 feet over and 25 feet up. So I need to start with the pound symbol. The pound symbol tells AutoCAD that the coordinates you are about to enter are absolute. So you type in 25, comma, and 25. And I didn't hit the feet, I hit inches instead, but that'll still work fine for our example. So now these coordinates are at 25 and 25 inches, which is 2 foot 1 inch and 2 foot 1 inch. And you can see that's the way it is on our coordinates in the bottom center of my screen. Lines are simple objects, but there are many ways to draw them. That gives us several methods to make sure that we accurately draw the information that we need. And we do that based on the information we already have and by knowing what it is we hope to achieve in our line work. If lines are single segmented objects connecting to points, then polylines are line segments in a connected sequence created as a single object. That means that they are lines or even arcs with multiple vertices. Polylines are great for drawing contour lines, wire diagrams, piping drawings, extrusion profiles, pathways, or closed objects. So when a polyline is closed, it means that there is no real beginning or end. It's called a polygon, essentially, or a many-sided shape. Now, you can create a polyline with several different commands. P-line or pline command, the rectangle command, which is the rectangle command. It's actually a polyline, not a rectangle object. You can use the polygon command, the donut command, the boundary command, and the rev cloud. It's a revision cloud for marking up drawings with. Most of the time, though, you're going to use p-line or pline. That's the most common used command to create a polyline with. And we'll talk about some of the other options in later sections. So drawing a polyline can be accomplished using the exact same methods that we use to draw a line object with. After all, a polyline is essentially just a set of lines connected together. So you can go up to the Home tab on the ribbon and go to the Polyline command, which is found in the Draw panel. And you draw it just like you would any other line. But when you select it, it's one object. Now a line, if I were to draw a similar shape very quickly here, looks about the same, but each one of these segments is its own object. That's the main difference. And that's really cool because you can do a lot of different things with a polyline, but a line gives you more control of the individual segments. So it just depends on what you need to draw. Now, you can draw a polyline or pline, as they're often called, because you enter the pline command, or P-L-I-N-E, or p-line. You can draw them using coordinates, relative coordinates, polar coordinates, length, etc., just like we did with the line command. One difference, though, is that plines can also be drawn as arcs. You can switch between a line to an arc to a line while drawing a polyline. Let me show you. So if we start the polyline command, you can just type in p-line on your command line or use the shortcut key, which is just PL. Pick your first point and your second point, there's your line. Now if you have options, remember there are always options for a lot of commands. Now if I click on the arc, I'm now drawing an arc. And it just continues on. Now these arcs, if you draw them in sequence, will be sinuous or tangent. They'll be tangent to the first arc that was drawn. Now if you want to draw a line, you just type in L or you pick line on the command line option. And it starts off drawing it as a line, not as an arc. Now that line will not be tangent to your previous arc. You can always switch, just type in A, type in L again, and then press enter to end your command. After you draw a polyline, you can use the polyline edit or the pedit command, P-E-D-I-T, P-edit. Press enter, select your polyline, and you have a lot of different options that you can choose from to make some changes to your polyline. Now you can close a polyline into a polygon with the close option. See, it found the open segment in our shape and filled in the blanks, went from point to point with a straight line. Of course, you can always undo something that you have just done. Now, if you have multiple lines, arcs, or polylines, you can use the join option. Let me show you. So up here, we have all of these individual lines. I can convert them to polylines and join them all together to be one shape similar to this first object. So I'm going to type in the pedit command. I'm going to select an object. And because it's not a polyline, AutoCAD is going to ask me, hey, do you want to convert this into a polyline? I'll type in Y for yes. And then I can click on the join option. And I just pick all of the lines or objects that I want to join together. Press enter again. And now all of those individual lines have been joined together to form one polyline. And you can do that with any type of line object or polyline or arc. And you can edit a polyline's vertex just by grip editing it. So if I select a polyline, I have endpoints, which look like these little squares, or midpoints, which look like those rectangles. If I hover over them, I will get some options. I have the stretch vertex option, add vertex, or remove vertex. Now the add and remove are actually quite simple. If I select the remove, it gets rid of it. If I come back up to this top one and go to add vertex, it allows me to add another vertex, sort of breaking that line and creating a vertex point. If I click on the stretch option, it allows me to move it to wherever I want. So that's an endpoint. If I go to a midpoint, I essentially have the same options. I can stretch it, which allows me to move it, and wherever it's connected to is going to move with it relatively. I can add a vertex, just like that, or I can convert to arc. That will change it to an arc, and I just define the radius by moving my mouse. Now the arc's midpoint is exactly the same, except it allows me to convert it back to a line. So if I pick that midpoint, it's a move. If I just pick the vertex, it's a move or stretch. But if I hover over it and click add vertex, I can at any time. Now it's the same way regardless of what type of polyline that it is. You can add a vertex right to this center arc, and it kind of creates two different arcs, which is kind of cool. You can get some very interesting shapes created very quickly. I can quickly stretch and change and edit these shapes and make some fantastic designs. Polylines are created the same way that lines are created, so you can go back to that section and see how you would draw a line, but it has a lot more options to it, a little bit more versatility, and it creates closed objects which you can use to find things like area of that shape, etc. Well, now you can draw lines and polylines, so now you need to know how to draw circles. Circles are used for many things. You can draw a hole, fantastic design, a wheel, a gear. I can go on, but you get the idea. A circle is a very simple thing. In geometry, a circle is defined as all of the points that are equidistant from a single point. So to draw a circle in AutoCAD, you use the circle command. You just type in circle on the command line, or just the letter C, or you can go up to the ribbon on the Home tab on the Draw panel and go to the circle command. Now, there are some flyouts for the circle. We'll go over those here in a few minutes. But a circle is very simple. By default, you'll be asked for the center of the circle as the starting point. You just click a point somewhere, and then you're asked for the radius. You can type in the number like that, 56, or you can just pick another point as you need to. It's that simple. Now, you may want to create a circle, though, by its diameter, and that's fine. Start the circle command, pick your first point, and remember to go to the command line for some options. You'll see here's diameter. Just click on the diameter, and now when I enter in a value, it's going to be with regards to diameter instead of radius. So if you don't want to pick button here in the command line, you can just type in the letter D. That will switch you to diameter mode, and you can draw your circle that way. Now, there are a few other ways to draw a circle besides the center and radius, and they are by 3 points, 2 points, or a tan radius. So let's open up a file. So type in the word open, press enter, browse to the files for this chapter, and let's take a look at the circles and arcs example file, and click open. And here we have some lines that are already set up. that will fit in to kind of show us how to draw circles with these other methods. Now, the 3-point option allows you to draw a circle based on 3 points along that circle. If you have 3 points that you need the circle to pass through, then this is a great method to use. To draw a circle with 3 points, you start the circle command and you pick the 3P option. You can just click it on the command line, or you can type in 3P. Now, another way to get to all of these other special options for circles is to go up to the ribbon. Go to the Home tab on the Draw panel and go to the Circle command, but click on the flyout. You have the center radius and center diameter. Those are your 2 standard ways that we've already looked at. Then you have the 2-point and you have the 3-point, and you also have the tan radius or tan. Now, once you see how the 3-point method works, the rest of these kind of will fall into place. So I'm going to select the 3-point method. So just follow the instructions on your screen. You need to find your first point. Now remember that wherever you pick, the circle will pass through that point. So I'm going to type in mid, M-I-D, press return. And I'm going to hover over this line here on my left. I'm going to get a little green triangle glyph. That's the midpoint snap. So I'm clicking that. Now I'm going to type in E-N-D, press return. I'm going to click that point. So now we have 2 points. My circle is going to pass through the middle of this line on the left and through the top of the line on the middle line here. So as you can see now, I'm also trying to locate my third point. Now that could be anywhere. I could pick the bottom of this line down here. I can pick point over here. I can go anywhere with it. Point is that using the circle 3P method is that the circle will pass through those 3 points. It means I don't know where the center is. I don't know the radius or diameter. I just know that my circle needs to pass through those 3 points. So I'm going to type in E&D. I'm going to pick that point there. And there we go. I drew the circle that way. So that's just another way of drawing a circle. Now the 2-point option works the same way, but with one less point. So if I go to the circle command and I pick the 2-point option, I'm going to pick 1 point. I'm going to type in E&D, snap to that point, and you can see here right away my circle is already up. Essentially, I'm typing in the diameter and sort of an angle or a coordinate. If I type in E&D, picks to that point. So I drew this circle this way. Just went from point to point. I didn't know the diameter. I didn't know the coordinates for the center of my circle. I didn't know any of that. I just knew that I needed my circle to go around this line. Now another method that you can use is the tan radius option. That's great for when you know what a radius is and you have to make the circle tangent to 2 objects. So we're going to try that option, tan radius. So when I do this, you can see that little glyph that pops up. That's the tangent OSNAP glyph. It looks like a little circle with a line and some ellipsis dots. So I pick my first line. I pick my second line. And now I type in my radius, which is going to be 12 units in this case. Press return. Now I have a nice circle. It's tangent to this line and this line. And I can use a trim command. I'm going to select these objects, press return. I'm going to trim these lines, and I've rounded a corner that way. So that's one application and one reason why you might use the tan radius. Now, of course, there's another option here called the tan, and you need 3 lines or 3 objects. Now let's say I need to have a circle that's tangent to all 3 of these lines. I will select the tan option, pick my lines, and there we go. Now I have what I need. So those are the different ways that you can create a circle. The majority of the time, you're going to probably use the standard out-of-the-box method of just defining the center point and then the radius. Most of the time, that's what you're going to do. But a lot of the other times, you will find it useful to use the 2-point, 3-point, or the tan radius option. There will be many times when you need to draw an arc. An arc is a portion of a circle or an unclosed circle. Maybe it's a circle that's been broken. It's not all of it, it's just part of it. Also keep in mind, if you have a circle object in AutoCAD and you break it or you delete part of it out of there, it actually changes object types. It changes from a circle to an arc. There are many ways to draw an arc, very similarly to the way we draw circles, only there are a lot more options. So you make sure to pick the one that suits your situation the best. Now by default, the arc command is drawn with the 3-point method. So if you type in the word arc, A-R-C, if you just type in the letter A, you can get to the command. Or if you come up to the ribbon and go to the Home tab with the Draw panel, you click on the arc button. Now it's drawn with a 3-point system. You pick your first point, you pick your midpoint, and then you pick your last point, wherever that's going to be. That's how you draw an arc. It's very simple, and a lot of times that's going to work out best for you. Now when you start the arc command, you'll notice that it has some options called center. But there are a lot of other options, and they're real easy, probably even easier to get to through the ribbon panels here. So if you go up to the arc, click on the flyout, and you can see there are a lot of different options. You have a start, center, end, start, center, angle, start, center, length, start, end, angle, start, end, direction, start, end, radius, center, start, end, center, start, angle, center, start, length, and then the continue option. And I'll make sure to show you about the continue option. Now, I'm not going to go into great lengthy detail on all of these because once you get the idea on how some of these work, the rest of them kind of make a lot of sense to you. So when we started the regular arc command, you should have noticed that there was an option called center. Now, this will make your first point the center of the arc. Let me show you the example here. If I click that, I pick my first point here. That's the center of the arc. Now, when I pick my next point, I can continue on drawing your arc. So it's kind of like drawing a circle, and then you type in sort of the radius or a start point, and then you just fill in the rest of it. You can do that. Let's open up a file that I've preset called arc examples. Click open. Now here we have in this file a lot of different lines that are set up for us so that we can try some of these things out. So if we come here, we have this little bracket that's started. Let's pick the arc command. And I want to go to start, center, end, or start, center, angle, or start, center, length. These are all kind of similar in that you pick your first start point, then you pick the center point, and then how you define where you end up at is a little bit different on your options. So let's go with start, center, end. So I'm going to start right here. I'm going to type in END for my end O-snap. Make sure I'm right where I want to be. So that's my start point. Now I need the center. You can see this is an arc right here. So I'm going to type in CEN for center. This is an O-snap to take you to the center of an arc or a circle. When I move over this arc part right here, you can see the center, which is right here, gives me a little glyph. That's a round glyph. That's for the center point. So it's now I'm picking that center, and now I'm drawing my arc. And this is the end part. And I'm just going to type in END for my O-snap and end. So I was able to draw that arc right there. Pretty handy. I wouldn't be able to do that with the regular arc command. I'd have to draw one point, and then my midpoint, which I'd have no idea where that was. As you can see, it doesn't really line up very well. So that are these options right here. You pick your start point, you pick your center point. If you know where it's going to end, you can put that in there. If you know what angle it spans, so you can see what angle this is. If you know what that is, you can type that in. Or if you know how long you want that arc length to be, you can type in that option as well. So those are your first sets of options. Now your second one is a start and an end, and then your angle, direction, or radius. So let's pick one of these. Let's go with the start, end, and angle. So I'm going to pick my first start point. I'm going to type in END again. I'm going to start here. I'm going to end up here. And then I type in an angle. So as you can kind of see here, as I reposition, coming straight out to the right, that gives me an angle of 0. But as I move up, my angle increases, making the radius more ice cream cone shaped. So if I know what that angle needs to be, I can just type that in, or I can just pick a point, and it makes a nice little pie shape. I can also go start, end, radius. So if I know what the radius is, I can go start, end, and then my radius. So if I know what that distance needs to be, what the radius is of my circle, I can type that in. If I erase this arc here, and I look at this line, I see what my length is, it's 10. Let's assume that this is going to be the center point of my arc. And I choose my start end radius option. Type in END, pick this point, pick this point, and then I type in a value of 10 units. This draws a circle and it makes a perfect pie shape for my arc. And that works fantastically. Now this last section gives you the center point, the start point, and an end point, or an angle or a length. So let's look at the center, start, and end. So first I want to pick my center point, which is going to be right here. So I'm using my end O snap. My next is my start point. Type in END, pick here. Now there's one thing to keep in mind with arcs. When you start an arc, regardless of how you start it, it is always drawn in a counterclockwise direction. So if I do this, this will draw a very large upside down Pac-Man looking shape. But if I want my arc to come through this middle part, I have to hold down the control key, and that will switch my direction, and I can just draw it again. So if I type in END, then I hold down the control key, I move over here, and it'll snap to that point right there. So which one of these arc methods do you use? Well, it depends on what information you have and what you want to draw. How do you know that? You just have to look at it. You have to see, like in this case here, we knew the center point, we knew the end point, and we knew the start point. So we were able to use that option. Here, with this method, we used these first options. We knew the start point, we knew a center point, and we knew an end point. So a lot of these are the same thing, start, center, end. You see here, start, center, end. They're just in different orders. You have a start, end, angle, direction, or radius. So it also depends on what you have and what order in which you can get to that information. It's just a matter of trying it out and getting used to it. Now that continue method that I wanted to talk to you about is a nice little thing. If you draw an arc and then you want to continue that arc, meaning not lengthening the arc or anything like that, but you want to draw another arc that starts from that same point, click the continue option. This will draw another arc that's tangent to the last one you drew. It'll only draw one and then the command ends. Now you can't press enter to restart it. That'll just restart your arc command, but it will not be continuous. So you have to go back here manually, click the continue button, and keep drawing it that way. So it's just a nice little thing that will draw an arc that is tangent to the last arc you drew, but it is a little cumbersome to use, but it is there and is available. There will be times when you need to create what's called a polygon. Polygon is a multi-sided closed shape. In AutoCAD, it's also a closed polyline. Now, there is a command called polygon. With this command, you can draw shapes from 3 sides all the way up to 1024 sides. Typically, you would probably only draw from about 3 to 10 sides, but it's good to know that you have options. So you can type on your command line the word polygon to get to the command. It's also available on the Home tab on the Draw panel here in the ribbon. And you come up here by the rectangle command, there's a little flyout, and you can click on polygon. Either way, you're going to get to the exact same thing. So once started, you're asked to give them the number of sides. So let's enter in the number 5. We're going to draw a pentagon. Press enter. Then you can either start the polygon at its center or draw one edge. Let's draw a pentagon with an edge length of 5 units. So I'm going to type in the number 5. Press return, and then you're asked if you want to inscribe it in a circle or circumscribed about a circle. Right now I'm just going to go inscribed in a circle. So I pick my start point, it has 5 edges, and now I specify the radius of that circle. I'll just call it 5. And there you go, there's a polygon. So when I select it, it's a full object, it's really a polyline. I can edit it just like I would any other polyline. But it's a great way to draw a shape with the lines and angles that are equal. So we saw some of those options to specify the center or pick an edge. So if I type in E for edge, I pick this first point. So I pick the first point. You can see as I move along, it changes the angle and the length of each leg of my polygon. If I go back, tell it 5 units, and now I pick the center. And then when I pick the center, I have inscribed or circumscribed. Here's a circle that I drew very quickly with a 5-unit radius. Now if I pick my polygon command again, and let's draw it with 5 sides again, and I'm going to just go to the center, type in CEN for your center OSNAP. Now I can inscribe it or circumscribe it. I'm going to pick inscribe. And what this does is that it will draw your polygon inside that circle. So your vertexes, your vertices will all be along that circle, but all your lines will be inside or inscribed inside that circle. So if I type in 5 for this radius, you can kind of see where that dashed line is there. That's the radius of this polygon. It matches up perfectly with my 5-unit radius circle. Start the polyline command again. Type in 5, type in CEN for the center of the circle, select the circle, and now I'm going to look at a circumscribed about the circle option. So now what it's doing, instead of drawing that dashed line to my vertex or to the vertice, it's going to the middle of one of my legs. So that means that my legs or segments of my polygon are going to be tangent to this circle. So if I type in 5 for my radius again, the polygon is on the outside, circumscribed outside of the circle. So those are the different options on how you can draw polygons. Rectangles and ellipses are special forms of polygons. Rectangles are fairly straightforward, whereas ellipses can be a bit tricky, but they do have some similarities. Rectangles work a lot like the polygon command, except that you're stuck with the criteria of a rectangle. You have 2 parallel sets of sides that are equal. And we've drawn the rectangle command several times already. So if I pick rectangle, pick my starting point, pick my finish point, there's a rectangle. So you pick 2 points on opposite sides of the rectangle to create your shape. So you can just pick the command here out of the ribbon, or you can type in rectangle or just REC, press return. So you pick your first point, and then you pick your second point. Now you can also define the lengths of the line to make it exact. You just type it in similarly to drawing a line. So let's say I want it to be 24 inches. I tab over and then we'll make it 12 inches high. And there we go. So we have drawn this rectangle at 2 feet wide and 1 foot tall. And you can see when I select it, my grips tell me that this is also just a regular polyline. Now there are some other options for the rectangle. If you notice here, you have chamfer, elevation, fillet, thickness, and width. Now to define the chamfer or fillet, you'll choose either the option C for chamfer or the option F for fillet, then you type in the value. So let's use a chamfer unit of 5. So we're going to type in C, press return, type in 5, and then 5 again because it gives it a bit of an angle. So now I pick my first point, and it looks just like a regular rectangle until the box is big enough to have a 5-unit chamfer on the corners. So that's a really cool trick. So if I do this again, and I select C for chamfer, let's say I go 10 units and then 5 units on that chamfer. Pick my first point, and you can see I have a chamfer here, but it's a little bit different because one is at 10 units and one is at 5. It goes on 10 and then 5. So keep in mind that first number you're going to pick, it'll go across and then up, and here it goes down and then across, etc. Keep that in mind. You're going to get weird shapes, and you typically aren't going to need something like this. And it's not going to give you something that is mirrored or symmetric unless both units are the same. So you're going to get kind of weird stuff, but if that's what you need, then it works out perfectly. Now the fillet option for the rectangle command works almost identically. So you start the rectangle command, type in F for fillet, press return, and then you enter in a value. I'm going to enter in 5 again, press return. So instead of the corners or the notch corners, corners are going to be round. And it has a radius of 5 units. So that's the fillet. It's very simple. and it makes a nice little shape. Rectangles are simple polygons, but you can get pretty fancy when drawing with them. So if you start the command again and look at the options, and you see that there is an elevation work. Well, that's for 3D work or for a thickness. So if I type in E for elevation, and I type in a value of 5, and then I draw my rectangle, I zoom in here, it looks exactly the same. Well, it's not. It's at a different elevation. It's up higher. It's kind of hard to see, but if I rotate my view, you see all of these rectangles are drawn at an elevation of 0. This one is at an elevation of 5. So that's just something else that you can do with it automatically. Now, my thickness option, I'm going to call it 5. And I'm going to draw a rectangle again. Again, in 2D, it looks the same. But when I rotate, it's 5 units tall or thick. It's also starting still, because I made that one change, at an elevation of 5. So you have to keep that in mind. Every little change I've made to the setting, I made a fillet for the corners, I changed the elevation to 5, and I changed the thickness to 5. It keeps adding to that. It remembers that. It keeps it the way that you had set it before. So keep that in mind. It doesn't reset every time you start the rectangle command. And on my last option, the width, type in W. Again, I'm going to use 5 because that number has been working so well for us. And I'm going to draw my rectangle. So now you can see here I have a very thick or very fat looking rectangle with my rounded corners. And then when I rotate, you can see here it's 5 units tall, 5 units wide, and at an elevation of 5 units. So in order to reset all of that, I'm going to have to go through my rectangle command, go through all of my settings, go to my fillet, set that to 0, go to my elevation, set that to 0, go to my thickness, set that to 0, and go to my width and set that to 0. Now I have a regular, plain old, boring rectangle again. So there are a lot of things that you can do with a rectangle besides just a regular old rectangle. Now let's take a look at the ellipse command. Now, ellipse is essentially an oval, and there are basically 2 ways to draw them. The command starts and you pick the center point, then you're going to pick 2 other points. Now there are 2 other ways to draw it as well, but we're going to start with just the regular ellipse command. You can type in the word ellipse, just type in the letters EL for ellipse, or you can go up to the ribbon and start the command. First of all, it asks you for a center point, and then for a width point. Think of this as being a horizontal line. That shows you how wide it's going to be. And now you have to define the height. As you can see, as I stretch it, it goes from a circular looking object to a more oblong traditional oval. And that's it. It's very simple to draw. Now, if I turn on my ortho command, press the F8 key, or if I click down here, I can draw a very simple, perfect looking oval. And that's great. You can use this a lot of times if you're making piping drawings in a profile view with an exaggerated y-axis. In civil design, you do this often, and so I get to do this quite a bit. So I'm drawing pipes cross sections like this all the time. So that's one practical use of an ellipse. Let's look at the axis and endpoints. So I specify my axis endpoints. That's my width. It skips the circle part. So I'm essentially picking on one side and then I'm picking on the other side. That's how wide my ellipse is going to be. And then I go to the height. Very simple. And then my other option here is the elliptical arc. Essentially, I'm drawing an ellipse, but I'm only going to draw an arc. So I pick my center point, my width point. I'm defining how the ellipse is going to look. I'm going to turn off my ortho command for this part. Now I pick my start point, and now I'm drawing the arc length. So that's how you get an ellipse like that. Now the ellipse, keep in mind, if your ortho command is turned off, like I have mine off right now, when I pick my points, I pick my center point, and then I pick my width, it's going to be drawn at this angle. It's not perfectly horizontal or vertical. So it can be oblonged like that. So there are a lot of different ways to draw it. And it depends, again, on exactly what you're trying to draw, the perspective of it, or what information that you have at the time. In an earlier section, we discussed how AutoCAD uses a Cartesian coordinate system. Now, sometimes we need to create nodes at specific coordinates. Now, those are known as points. There is a command that can help you draw a point. Now, its size doesn't matter because a point actually has no size. It's only a marker or a node for a specific set of coordinates. Now, a good example of using points in AutoCAD would be that of a surveyor locating the corners of a piece of property or building. Now, the nice thing about points is that you can define their display size and you can snap to them. So if somebody gives you a list of points, you can put them in a drawing and draw lines to each one, kind of like playing connect the dots. So let's draw some points. Very easy to do. You just type in the word point, P-O-I-N-T, or P-O. Now you find those coordinates. You can enter them in manually, just like you would with the line command. So if you want a point at 0, 0, you do that. Now with points, they're a little bit different than with lines or any other commands. It only does one. It does 1 point, and then if you want to draw another point, you have to start the point command again. So there, now I have 2 points. You can see it's like a little bitty dot. There's another little bitty dot right on the origin there. So I can put these dots in however many times I want for whatever purpose that I have. So it's real easy to do. Now, if I want to put them in a very specific point, let's say I want to put it at 5, 5, go 5, 5. And there we go. There's my point at 5, 5. So points are also three-dimensional, just like every object in AutoCAD. If you leave the third coordinate off, it will be drawn at an elevation of 0. Right now, these probably look like tiny dots. If not, that's okay. If yours looks differently, then your settings are currently slightly different than mine. But if you've worked right out of the box, they should look like this, and that's okay. So let's play a game of connect the dots. So I'm going to start the polyline command, press enter, and we want to snap to these. Now to snap to a point, you type in NOD, that's short for node. Press return, and you get a little circle target with an X through it, and it snaps right to that point. Now just type in NOD for node, and just keep snapping to all of the points that you've drawn. And you can snap to any one at any time to create a shape. Now, if these little dots are very hard for you to see, that's okay. You can change their appearance or their size. You'll have a couple of different variables to work with. One of them is PD MODE or PD mode. Right now it's set at 0. If I set it to 1, you've kind of lost them there, haven't you? Set them to 2, they look like a plus sign. If I set it to 3, they look like an X. So you can make them look different. It just depends on what you want to do. Now there's also another setting called PD size. Now you can set them to an absolute size. So you can say, I want them to always be 5 units. So if I zoom out, sort of do a refresh or a regen all, no matter what I do, these X's are always really big. If I go to PD size again, let's make that to something smaller, a little bit more manageable. Set it to 1. There we go, they're at 1. Now, there is another option that you can use. If you type in DDP type on the command line, it gives you this nice little window so that you can actually see what you're picking. Now, remember when we use the PD mode, that are these settings. That is the shape of the point. This is just a little dot. That was a setting of 0. A setting of 1 turns them off. The points are there, you just can't see them. Then a plus sign, an X sign, this line, a circle with a dot, etc. You see all the different options. And then the PD size command is controlled right here in the point size. These are in absolute units. So no matter what scale your drawing is at, they will always be drawn at 1 inch size in this case. Now sometimes your scales will vary, but you're using the same set of line works or the same points. And so you need them to always show up and always be the same size. Well, you can do that. You can set it here, set it relative to the screen. So it'll always be 1 inch or 1% of the screen size. That's something you might want to do. Click OK, and we see our shapes change to circles. And when I zoom in, it looks like they get bigger until I refresh my screen. So they're always going to be a little bitty spot like that. So if I go to my DDP type, let's make this a little bit bigger. Let's change it to 5%. Click OK. So now when I zoom out, you see, okay, they're kind of faded away. But if I refresh it, oh, there we go. They'll always be that size. A lot of times this is the method that I use because I need to be able to see my points and know where they're at. But sometimes though, you're just zoomed out really far and they're just kind of all on top of each other. That happens too. So it just depends on the needs for your drawing and the scale of that drawing at the time. Now it would be really nice that if we could have different settings for different points, but we can't. So however you set up your point settings for this AutoCAD file, you have to use that one set. You can't have multiple styles like you can with dimensions or with text. So just keep that in mind. Now it's one thing to be able to draw lines and circles, but it's another to draw them accurately. O-snaps are one of the key features in AutoCAD that enable us to be able to draw with precise and exact accuracy. O-snap is short for object snap. They force you to automatically draw from a specific point on an object. We've used several of them already, like endpoint, midpoint, or center, or even the nodes. But I just want to make sure that you get an introduction to them, as well as some of the other methods of drafting that we have. So pressing the F3 button will toggle on what's called your running O-snaps. It'll toggle them on and off. By running, I mean that they are on or always running, kind of like your refrigerator is running. So if you type in OS on the command line, press enter, that will bring you to your drafting settings window. Make sure you go to the Object Snap tab. Now if you press F3, that will automatically turn on or toggle on your running O-snaps. Now, what I typically do is I select all of them because I want all of them on, but I will turn off the parallel and the nearest. I turn that off because the nearest O-snap will snap to whatever nearest location of the object is that it can find according to where your mouse cursor is at. Well, I don't want that. Sometimes I do, but if I do, then I'll just manually override it and force the nearest O-snap. The other one I turn off is parallel. I do that because drawing parallel lines with the O-snap is extremely difficult to do. It can be done, but it can be difficult at the same time. And typically, if I need a parallel line, I'll use the offset command to create a parallel line. So this is what I do. Click OK. Let's draw a rectangle here real quickly so we have something to snap to. I'm going to create a circle. Let's type in C, then enter. And I want to draw the center of this circle at the end of this box right here. So you can see my O-snaps are running. I pressed F3, and it'll tell you in the command line if they're on or off. Also note, you can find them here on your status bar. You can click this to toggle them on and off. Remember, blue is on, gray is off. And you can also get to the settings right here to turn them off or on. So if I click on the arrow, I can say, yes, I want these to run, and no, others I don't want to run. Or you can get to your object snap settings by clicking on there as well. So I've clicked here for my center point. So now I'm going to draw my circle to the midpoint of that line. It was very quick, very easy. I drew exactly what I wanted to do and at an exact location without having to do anything else. That's what O-snaps will give you, and that's what running O-snaps will give you. So let's draw a circle again similarly on this side. But let's say I want something a little different. If I right-click and hold for my shortcut menu, I can get to all of my O-snaps right here. These are my snap overrides. Any one of these that I pick, let's say endpoint, will automatically override all of my running O-snaps. So regardless of what I have turned on or off, when I pick that from my menu, or if I manually type in the specific O-snap I want, that's the only one that's going to work. So now I can't go to my midpoint, I can't go to the center, I can't go to a tangent or anything. I can only go to an endpoint. Let's take a look at what all of the O-snap options are. So I have endpoint. And if you don't remember what they do, just open this up, move your mouse over, and the tooltip will come up and it will show you what that object snap will do. So this is an endpoint. It snaps to the end of a line or an arc or polyline, etc. The midpoint will snap to the middle portion, the exact middle of an object. Center will take you to the center of a circle, an arc, or an ellipse. The node will take you to a point object. A couple of typical ones will be the points, or it will be the definition point of a dimension. A definition point of a dimension is the point that is being dimensioned from. It puts a little node there, and you can snap to that. The quadrant will take you to the quadrant of an arc or circle or ellipse. Let me show you what that one looks like. So I want to draw a line from the quadrant of this circle right here. It gives you a little diamond glyph. Each one of these O-snaps has its own looking glyph. Eventually, once you use them a lot, you will get to recognize them and know what they are automatically. Also, if I hold it there long enough, a little tool tip will come up like it says here, quadrant. Say, hey, you're at the quadrant. So if you're not sure if it's at the right, just hold it there, wait a second or two, say, oh yes, it's definitely a quadrant. And it picks that quadrant. So it's essentially these corner pieces, if you can imagine a circle having a corner, points of a compass, so to speak, north, south, east, and west. It works very similarly to an ellipse. It'll take me to the quadrant point, and it's not the exact top point, but it's the exact quadrant point from the center. So this is actually offset just a little bit, so you can kind of see that. So that's the quadrant. The intersection is where two objects will intersect each other. So that one's very obvious. Now an extension causes, as it says here, I'm just going to read it, temporary extension line or arc to be displayed, and you can go along that pathway. So if I want to go to the extension, I just kind of go to the end of it and just kind of stretch it. You can see that that goes right there. So that's a great way to extend a line that isn't there, but you know you want to go along that pathway to pick a point. Those are kind of tricky, and you gotta be a little bit delicate and slow with it, but it can be very useful and reduce work because it means you are not drawing construction lines. The insertion point works with blocks and other things like that that have a point that defines the main point of that object. Perpendicular, very straightforward here. You will draw your line perpendicular to the selected line. Tangent's very similar. It will draw it tangent to that circle or arc. Now the nearest, wherever you're closest to on that object when you pick it, that's where it's going to go to. So let me show you. If I want to draw a line somewhere across here, I don't want the midpoint, I don't want the endpoint. I just need it near, NEA. I just need it to be on this line. And there it is. Apparent intersection, that's where two objects would intersect, but they're not physically drawn there. So maybe the lines or arcs are just a little bit short, but if you continued them on, they would eventually intersect each other, but they really don't. And you can use that to find that point. Parallel, you select an object and then you will pick a point and it will automatically draw it parallel to that point as well. Now, if you use these methods of using your running object snaps and then your object snapped overrides either by manually typing them in or by using your shortcut menu, you'll be able to draw more quickly and more accurately. A drawing in AutoCAD is really nothing more than just a series of lines, arcs, and polygons. In this chapter, we looked at drawing each of these objects and a few more things. So let's make a drawing using as many of these items as I can throw in. So we aren't going to concentrate on creating an accurate machine drawing per se, nor will we be creating design plans for your new house, but we're going to use these tools and commands that you learned about in this chapter. So let's start a blank file. Click on the New Tab button, go to the Get Started option, and go to the Templates and select acad.dwt. So we're going to start off by saving this file because that's good CAD practice, and we're going to call it the Chapter 5 project. This file will be available to you to take a look at. It'll be exactly what we draw here, and it will be called Chapter 5 Project Final. So in this drawing, we're going to create a simple landscaping plan for a home. Now we have nothing really to go by, so we're going to need to create the basic outline of a house. Its driveway to the end of the road, a door, sidewalk, and some planting areas, and possibly a small pool or fountain, something like that. So let's create a generic outline of our house. We're going to use the rectangle command. And we're just going to draw it here And let's just make it 30 units wide by 50 units tall. So type in 30, press tab, type in 50 for 50. Double click on the scroll wheel to zoom out to give us an idea of what it looks like. So now we're going to draw a road. We're going to make two parallel lines about 30 units apart and about 30 units from the house. So let's draw a line. With your running O snaps turned on, click right here. Turn on your ortho mode. You can press F8 or click on the status bar button right here. Remember, if it's blue, it's on. Draw a straight line down. Type in 30 for 30 units. And we'll just draw a line out arbitrarily 200 units. Press return. Press return again. I'm going to throw in a command here that we haven't used yet, and that's called the move command. Type in M for move, press enter, select this line, press enter again. With your running O snaps on, for the midpoint, find that little triangle and left click there. Now move over to the left, use the end point O snap and click on there. I'm going to throw in another command we haven't used yet called the offset command. And I'm doing this because it's just so much easier to use the right commands. We'll go into details on these much later on. So type in O for offset, press enter or the return key. Type in 30 for 30 units, press return again. Select this line, move your mouse down below it, left click and press enter. So now we have a house and our road. Select this line and erase it. I'm going to move these just kind of out of the way so that our UCS icon is not in our way. There. Okay, so now we have our house and our road, so we kind of have an idea of what's going on. This is the front of the house, this is the rear, and then our sides. Now we need to draw a driveway. We're going to make two parallel lines, about 20 units apart from the house to the road. Type L for line, and then type in NEA for near O snap. Press enter, kind of zoom in, and just find anywhere on here, it doesn't really matter. Left click, and then draw a line down here. Use the perpendicular O snap. You can type in PER to override that. Press enter. And now that line is drawn. Now I want to make this 20 feet wide, so I'm going to use that offset command again. Type in the letter O, press enter, and type in 20 for 20, and select the line, and then move to the right of it, and then click again, and then enter. Now we have another line that's 20 units wide. This is our driveway. It's a very skinny house, but you get the idea. Now I want to make a doorway. Let's put the door on the side over here, so it's a side door. Start the line command, press return, and again type in NEA for near, press return, and zoom in, just anywhere down here is fine. Now I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to make this line, because it's a door, I'm going to make it 3 units long, type in the letter 3, and then press tab. Now this tells AutoCAD that I'm drawing at an angle, so I'm going to draw it at 60 degrees, press return, return again. So now I have a line that's going to be a door. Now, oftentimes in architectural drawings, when there's a door and it's shown open, you put a little arc in there. So let's go with our arc. What do we know? I have my start point, which is going to start here. It's going to end over here somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but I do know that angle is 30 degrees. And I know this is going to be my center point. So I can go with the center, an end, and an angle. So I select that object. There's my center point. There's my start point. And now my angle. Type in 30 for 30. And there we go. So there's my little door. Now I've done some work already, and I don't want to lose this, so I'm going to save it. So I click the save button, or I press Control and S at the same time. So now I've saved my work. I'm not going to lose any of it. Now I want to draw a sidewalk. So I'm going to draw a polyline, and I'm going to make it parallel, and it's going to be about 5 units apart. So let's start our polyline command, and it's going to come from this door. So I'm going to left click here, and I want it to come out straight a little bit, and then it's going to curve around into my driveway. So let's turn on my ortho command, and let's just draw it out a few units. It doesn't really matter how far. I'm going to turn off my ortho command now, and I'm going to start drawing arcs. So type in the letter A for arc, press enter. And I'm going to make a slightly meandering little sidewalk here with some slight arcs to it, but then it levels off to a straight line. And I'm going to make this perpendicular to my sidewalk. Press return. So there's the start of my sidewalk. And I'm going to offset this again. So type in the letter O. This time type in 3, press return, select the line, go to the inside, and left click, and then press enter. So there's a nice little sidewalk. Now I need to create a planting area. And what I'm going to do is connect the dots. So I'm going to make some points. Type in PO, and then enter. That planting area is going to be over here somewhere. Now remember, if you right click, it acts as the enter command, which will give you your last command that you had run. Now those are there, and I'm going to type in dd ptype. And let's set these up a little bit. Let's make the point size relative to the screen. Keep it at the 5%. Let's make little X marks. Click OK, and there they go. Now I'm going to use my polyline command. I'm going to connect the dots. So just with your running O snaps on, you can see this becomes very easy. Make sure you use the node O snap. Then when I'm done, I can just type in CL to close it. Now let's draw some circles just randomly in here. And I just need a center radius. Varying sizes, varying amounts. Maybe these will represent what some plants are going to be. Now over here on the side, I'm going to draw a nice little ellipse for a little pool or fountain type area. So let's go to our regular center pool. I'm going to turn on my ortho again. Just press F8 or click on the icon down here in the bottom. Select a point, and I'm going to make it 5 units wide and then 10 units tall. And now I want to make a pathway or some stones around it just to pretty up the fountain. So I'm going to use my polygon command. Come up here for polygon, and I'm going to give it 6 sides. I'm going to pick a point here, inscribe it, and I'm going to make them about 1 unit in size, so they're about 2 or so units wide. Now I'm going to copy these with the copy command. So type in CP, press enter, select that, press enter again. Just pick a point somewhere towards the middle, turn off my ortho, and I'm just going to randomly put them around my pool. You just left click at the spot where you want it to go. When you're finished, press return, double click on your mouse, and we have the start of a landscaping plan for our house. Make sure to save your work so that you don't lose it. And there you go. Now yours might be a little bit different because I did some things that were just kind of random, and that's perfectly fine. This is just a demonstration very quickly of how to draw with several different tools in a very simple way.